Hello, Jules fans, and welcome to the View from the Medway Fancast in partnership with the Gillingham Supporters Club. Generous Gills strike again in the local derby against Bromley. The first ever EFL League meeting went the way of the hosts yesterday. It was an eventful first half where Gillingham Jake Tucker's face kept the scores level at half-time. A great tackle left Elliot Nevitt frustrated, and Michael Cheek's early volley was brilliantly saved by Turner, setting the tone for a fiercely contested game. As the second half kicked off, Gillingham made a crucial change with Morris coming on for Turner, but a risky pass to Coleman almost led to a penalty. But seemingly out of nowhere, Bromley seized the lead just 90 seconds later, though the Jewels did respond when Nevitt found Robin McKenzie on the edge of the box and he levelled the match at 1-1. However, Bromley weren't done yet and quickly reclaimed the lead with a half-volley strike from former Gills youth player Jude Arthurs being in the right place at the right time. This crucial goal obviously allowed Bromley to secure a 2-1 victory over Gillingham, making it 7 losses in the last 9 for Mark Bonner's men. Joining me, though, tonight to discuss the game from last night, we have, obviously, the one and only Mr. Warren. We have former COO and fan of the podcast, Mr. Paul Fisher, and making his first appearance tonight, Mike Cunningham. Guys, let me start with you, Paul. How are we after 24 hours after the game?
I slept on it. I was still pretty disappointed actually with the performance. I thought that was kind of as bad as I think it ever got in sort of my time really in the pre-de Gallinsons era. I mean, wasn't a good performance, was it?
No, it wasn't. Warren, I mean, obviously you were there, seeing your name underneath hungover. Were you drinking to forget, or is that why?
I think it's a 12 o'clock midday yesterday. I just look at the game and I'll ask Fish, did you think that resembled Newport away pre-Gallinsons last night's performance?
Everything was so disjointed, wasn't it? I didn't see just didn't feel there was any pattern of play or anything. It was awful.
Yeah, it's rubbish.
Yeah, it was. Mike, first off, thank you so much. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike.
Obviously, the game last night didn't go the way it was a local derby. I mean, well, do you think it was a local derby?
I'm not really too bothered, to be honest with you, Matt, with the way I'm feeling at the moment. But, they're only half hour, 40 minutes up the road. So if you want to call it a local derby, you can do. But it's the least of my worries at the moment as a Gills fan, yeah.
Well, we're going to obviously jump into the game in a moment, but let's get some Bromley facts up for you before we jump on. So, Bromley were founded in 1891 when they were playing in the South London League. They then became founding members of the Southern League in 1894. In 1907, the club were founder members of the Spartan League before joining the Ishmael League the following season, winning back-to-back titles. So, on to the starting lineup yesterday. So, we had Jake Turner in goal. Seemingly a back four of Shad Oji, Max Amar, Connor Masterson, and Romeo Hutton. A midfield four of Jaden Clark, Ethan Coleman, returning Robbie McKenzie, and Jack Nolan. And then a top two of Elliot Nevitt and Marcus Wiley. Our bench consisted of, it was Harry Webster, Johnny Williams, George Lapsley, Glenn Morris, Ewan Williams, Jacob Wakelin, and Josh Andrews. Guys, obviously we started really the last sort of the season playing almost as a 5 at the back. We went back to a sort of almost a 4-4-2 yesterday. Paul, could you see that before the game? Could you see that happening? Do you think we were stronger as sort of as 5 at the back, or more as a 4 at the back?
I'm a bit old school, Matt. 4-4-2 is the formation I think gives us more options up front really. and I'm not sure we've got enough pace in the side to play the wing back. So I'm a big fan of 4-4-2, but I couldn't work out if that was what we were playing last night, because, Ogie, he seems to be happier in the centre of the pitch. He didn't seem to be particularly happy as left back. I thought it just looked, the defence had a really poor night, didn't they? They lacked shape, gave lots of bad, gave 2 really bad goals away by kind of, by bad defending, really.
It was. Obviously, we'll get on to that a little bit later on. Warren, do you think Paul was sort of almost hit the nail on the head there? Because it did seem like sort of almost going forward, we were playing kind of like a 4-4-2 going forward, but sort of defensively, we were a bit all over the place. It was kind of almost like a 3-5-2 one moment and a 5-3-2 and then a 4-4-2. It was a bit of a mix. So could you see that from where you were sat?
Yeah, I was a bit confused, really. I didn't think it was a 4-4-2. I thought Nolan played as a 10, just in behind the front two. I thought Clark and Hutton were meant to be wing backs, and we played sort of 3 at the back. But then when we got the ball, Ogie then pushed to the left back, and we pushed Clark out wide. But we did get Hutton as far up the field as we possibly could. But if you just look at that team, tell me any one of them players with pace, real pace.
Well, do you know what, Mike?
Absolutely none of them.
Mike, why don't you answer that for Warren? Where's the pace in that squad there?
Well, there isn't any, is there? I mean, Jaden Clark in short bursts, but it's very rare that he'll push a ball past his fullback and skin him. They'll always look to come back inside, especially when he's playing on the left. We're devoid of all pace, aren't we? All over the pitch.
I mean, look, there was a few times last night where Jaden did take on his man and got round him, and I'm starting to see it more. But definitely at the start of the season, he wasn't doing that a lot. But you're right, there's not a lot of pace really in that squad, even on the bench. I mean, obviously, we're hoping that players like Aaron Rowe and that will come back sooner rather than later. Obviously, I think Aaron Rowe's back on the pitch. Here's just a comment as well come through. Adrian, did you see the way that Bromley players celebrated when they scored compared to us? Well, yes, I did see Chris come running down from the back of the stand to celebrate the Gillingham goal. But yeah, the players, I don't know, it seemed there was a lot more passion from the Bromley players myself. But let's get on to the actual game itself. Paul, as a former goalkeeper, I've got to ask you about Jake Turner. 2 big saves, one from Michael Cheek in the first, literally a couple of minutes, quite a big save to keep the goal, the game level. But then obviously the big one right before half time, where he got the ball full on in the face. I think Mark Bonner's come out and said he might have potentially broken his nose. He's had a black eye and some swelling. But that was some brave goalkeeping from Jake there, wasn't it? For that, especially for that. last one.
Yeah. I mean, I thought, to be fair, at my age, with a new hip that I've got these days, I think I probably could have still saved the first one. It should never been beat at his near post. So that was a relatively straightforward save for someone of Turner's class. But the second one, he's come out, made himself big, and it's hit him straight in the middle of the face, the poor bugger. It was. When I first saw it, I thought good save, and then when I watched the replay back, it did actually, and he did really get hold of it as well. Their player, that would have really hurt poor old Jake. He was in a bit of a mess, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he literally, I think, pretty much got up straight away and took sort of 5 or 6 paces backwards before he then had to sit down because I believe there was blood coming out. He had to change his top. But yeah, I mean, it was really important, Warren, I think, that save from Jake. But let me ask you about the Elliot Nevitt one-on-one chance that he had. Can you answer me this one question? Why didn't he pull the trigger sooner?
I think when you're a striker and you're devoid of confidence and devoid of goals, you do tend to take an extra touch just to try and make sure. Unfortunately, Elliot's just not there at the moment, in my opinion. I think as a team, and a lot of people are going to disagree with me, but when we've played Hawkins up front, I think we've had more of a threat up top than we're playing Nevitt.
You generally believe that?
Yeah, I do.
I'm in the same place.
Nevitt have some puffs, whereas Hawkins, right, and although he's had to play on his own most of the time when he has played up front, I think if you had Hawkins up front with either Wiley, Clark, Wakeling, whoever you want to pick, I think would create a lot more. I just don't see anything that Nevitt brings at this moment in time, whether it's because he's not fit and he's playing because he's got to play, because Andrews isn't fully fit. I don't know, but it just doesn't seem to be there at the moment, and he hasn't shown me anything other than being a poor man's Gary Mulligan.
I mean, Mike, come jump in on this. Obviously, yeah. I saw the little smile there, but do you think this is Elliot Nevitt we're talking about here? Do you think this is just a striker who is, void of all confidence and just really finding it hard to kind of get his rhythm in this team?
Well, yeah, obviously he's struggling with his confidence at the moment, but the only way that's going to change, Matt, is by sticking the ball in the back of the net. There's got to be a first time, hasn't there? And last night, it was very reminiscent of the chance he had away at Crewe late on as well. And if you look at his chance last night, it was almost a carbon copy of the second Harrogate goal when the bloke went through. That's a bloke who's not got any worries. He took one touch, got it out of his feet, composed himself and slotted it in. So therein lies the difference, doesn't it?
So Paul, I've got to ask, and would you be in favour of an Ollie Hawkins and another playing up top? And if so, then who would you potentially have playing up top with?
Well, I think this is one of the big issues with the team at the moment. League Two football is ugly. Warren's watched them probably for the same period of time that I have. I think we're broadly from the same generation. I think League Two is all about, I'm a big fan. I think you've got to have players who are big, nasty, right through the spine of the team. And I think every team in League Two, at the very least, you've got to have a big target man up front who can hold the ball up, at least hold the ball up for you and win a few headers. And I just think, I just don't think we're nasty enough. All those great Gillingham sides that, I've grown up watching, we always had, going back to Tony Cascarino, the Dean Whites, all those sort of players. We had players who were big and nasty, and that was what the identity of Gillingham players were. And I think we've lost our way really in terms of trying to get out of League Two, trying to play tappity tap, triangle, bloody Premiership football. That's not what's going to get you out of League Two.
So Warren, I'm going to ask you this then, is what do we have, or do we have anything in our squad that is able to get us out of League Two up top? I mean, there's the idea has been floated around about having Nevitt and Andrews up top, or even playing, Andrews and Wiley, or Andrews and Clark. I mean, what do you think could be the solution already in our squad there that we haven't already tried?
First of all, I totally agree with Fish. The identity of getting out of League Two, you've either got to have the best 18 players, which Stockport and Wrexham had last season in abundance in the squad, or you've got to kick your way out of this division. You can't play tappy-tappy football not to get out of League Two, especially if you're not very good at it, and we're not very good at it because we don't pass the ball quick enough. We haven't got anyone with pace to get past defenders and get chances in the box. So you got to have some sort of nastiness. And I've been crying out for this since the start of the season. I sent a question over to ME7 when they interviewed Mark Bonner, and I said that we needed a new left back, or did Mark think we needed a new left back and someone who was hard as nails, a real leader? And sort of Mark just scoffed a little bit at the question, but I think it's ringing true a little bit now that what I said was was right, because everyone's saying we need a new left back, and we also need someone who's going to get a bit of blood on their boots. I just think that I appreciate the culture, and I appreciate that times change, and I appreciate the fact that the Gallinsons want to create a culture which is a lovey-dovey American-style culture where the players got a nice little breakfast bar in the morning, and they get asked how they want their eggs done, along with their bit of salmon, and it's all lovey-dovey. But unfortunately, being nice and not being just nice players or nice people don't win you anything. And this set of players show their nastiness in a different direction to where it should be, and that's on the pitch. It's towards each other. It's whatever. But I'd like to ask everyone on the panel, after the Barrow game when we won, and then we've gone on this horrendous run, do we think that there's something that went on behind the scenes after the Barrow game that we don't know about?
I mean, well, first off, if it's happened behind the scenes, that's why we don't know about it. But you've got to remember that after that game, you know, Mark Bonner did come out and he said a few harsh truths. I believe they were harsh truths, but he said some harsh truths about the game because it wasn't the best game in the world. Yeah, we might have won 2-0, but we could have been much, much better than how we played. And he came out and he was passionate and he said it. If certain players, I was going to say, if in that group have taken that to heart, that's on them. Sorry, Paul.
Sorry, Matt. Can you just bear with us 1 minute, Matt? Sorry, mate.
Sorry, Matt. Sorry to cut across you there. I think there was. I read that he was. That was a bit of reverse psychology there from the manager. That's kind of how I read that. That was kind of, okay, boys, we've won, but you can do better. You know, if the players have taken that the wrong way, then I cannot believe the players something like that would have affected us on that bad run.
I mean, it wasn't the worst thing he could have said. He could have been a lot more hurtful, but you know, you're kind of right. I think it was more of a, come on, guys, let's get better, but almost a rallying cry.
Yeah, I just think leadership now. It's probably like in life, really, but certainly, you know, I played a lot of football, as you all know. You know, I've been in dressing rooms when people have, you know, come to fisticuffs with each other, and you know, people would argue that's passion. But I think the days of rollicking players and throwing teacups at them and throwing boots at them, I think those days have unfortunately gone. I think if you start doing that with the modern snowflakes who are the professional footballers, I think if you start doing that with those guys now, that they have to be motivated in different ways. A bollocking isn't the way to motivate players nowadays. There's different ways of doing it. There's, you know, it's much more, you know, players have got egos. You have to stroke those egos more. There's all different motivational tactics, which I kind of think, you know, everything I've seen of Mark Bonner, I think he's probably tried. I'm sure Mark has tried absolutely everything to get more out of the team. Unfortunately, it's just not working.
Well, do you know what, Mike? I'm just going to come to you on this next question. It's actually something we've had come through by Jules Gregg on Twitter, who's put, look, we've had 50 shots on target all season. There is your problem. And it's something that I've been bringing up for weeks and weeks. And you look, we've had 16 shots in total yesterday, but out of that 16, 2 of them on target. I don't know what that percentage-wise is, but it's, you know, probably under 10%. That's not a great look, really, for a team that are trying to get promoted, is it?
Well, it's not, no, but and therein lies the problem. We don't create enough, do we? You know, I mean, for example, Nolan put about 3 or 4 crosses into the box last night in a sort of 15, 20-minute period. And that was all we had all game. We didn't have anything before, and we didn't really have anything after that. Romeo Hutton might have put 2 or 3 in, but they're often sort of high looped crosses where it's meat and drink for the opposition defenders and goalkeeper to come and claim, you know.
Okay, well, Paul, I was toying whether to ask you this question, but you know what? I'm going to chuck it out there. I'm going to ask you it. I asked this question at a fan forum when Stephen Clements was involved, and I don't think he gave me the best answer. But as a former football player yourself, what is a Gillingham footballer? What is a Gillingham football player? What characteristics should they possess?
I think it's the values of the club, you know, and what the area stands for. It's, you know, people who are honest, people who work hard, and people who are tough. You know, I think of the players that I've, you know, from my first spell at the club, the players I really admired was, you know, people like Mark Saunders, Paul Smith, you know, Dave Martin, Mark Harris. You know, I don't feel as if we've got those characters in the side at the moment. I'm sure it's there beneath it with the guys, but it's just not happening. It's just not happening. And that sort of feels, you know, Gillingham, you know, I'm Gillingham born and bred. You know, it's a tough, Medway Towns, it's a tough working class area. You know, that's what we need to be standing for. You know, we've got to be tougher. We've got to be stronger. You know, we've got to go in studs up every so often. And I just think we've become a little bit, you know, a little bit too soft.
So, Warren, obviously you're of a certain vintage, like myself and Paul. Obviously, we remember these players like Paul Smiths and even your Andy Heston-Tylers and your Guy Butters from the 90s. But how many players can you count that actually show those kind of characteristics in this current Gillingham squad?
None.
None at all?
Absolutely none.
Not would you not even say someone like Armani Little shows some kind of passion and drive to get us up the pitch when he's playing?
Yeah, but he doesn't play hardball, does he? He shows plenty of passion and drive, and he tries when he's out there. When he's out there, that is. I just think that the way the world's gone has created different people, and I'm not necessarily blaming players because we look at the whole world in general, and things are soft. I can remember about 35 years ago, I started Gills Travel Football Club, and for the first year, all we did was play a few friendlies, and the lads came out on a Sunday. They run, they got fit. They weren't the best set of players, but they came out and they put their heart into it. They got fit. They played their odd friendly every 2 or 3 weeks before we went into the Medway area Sunday League the following year. And training was tough. We run. We got ourselves physically in shape so that we could compete, even if the skill level wasn't there. And then a couple of years ago, I was asked to manage a senior section side, and we went to our first training session. I wanted to start in July. They wanted to start in June, and I got all the lads together from this team, and I said, "Look, the reason why you finished bottom last year was because you weren't strong enough, you weren't fit enough, and you wasn't able to physically compete against your sides like Quested and Cliffwood Colts." And I said, if you want this to work, we're going to have to get physically fitter and stronger, right? And the first thing the lads all said to me was, "Oh, we don't do any running in training." And I thought, Jesus wept. Times can't have changed that much, but they have. And it's the same in everyday life. Everything's gone too soft. We're scared to say boo or goose, and for fear of upsetting someone. And I think that's what a football dressing room's like now. We're scared to upset Armani Little because he's our best player. We're scared to upset Bradley Dack by calling him out because potentially he could be our best player, because it's too soft. And I'm afraid until we toughen up a little bit, and that's from the very top of the club all the way down, if we don't toughen up a bit, we're never going to get promoted. And we need to just toughen up and get real and decide, or the players need to decide, what do they want? Do they just want their $4,000 a week, $3,000 a week, right? Their top of the range car, nice little house, right? And they just want to play football, but they don't want to achieve anything? Or do they want to go out and work for their money?
I mean, Mike, obviously Warren does almost make a good point there, and it almost makes me think of almost an old manager who used to be in charge. I'm sure 99% of the fan base probably wouldn't want him back, but he's the style of manager that I kind of feel these players need at the moment, and that's Steve Evans. Somebody to really get up these players and really kick them up the bum. Do you think it's a case of Bonner's being a bit too soft on them, and that we need that kind of gritty manager in the sort of Steve Evans type? Or is it the players are just, like some fans seem to think, not caring?
Well, I mean, Fish touched on it, and obviously Warren has as well, about, snowflakes and whatever. And you made a good point, Matt, earlier. After the Barrow game, Bonner made some comments that, like you said, we didn't think were particularly the worst at the time. But was that the turning point in the players' minds? Did they get the ump about that? Because we often bring up the players' mentality. I mean, if that's their breaking point, then God help us, But yeah, maybe not a Steve Evans, maybe more a Martin Allen, who can be a man motivator as well as a man manager, and a team manage the team, rather than just someone who's going to shout in people's faces all the time. That's not always particularly constructive. That has a pretty short shelf life. But it certainly needs someone. I mean, the last two managers we've had, Clements, it was his first job, and Bonner, it's only his second job, and he's not 40 yet. So those two are about as wet behind the ears as you can get in terms of lower league football management, aren't they?
Absolutely. And obviously, guys, if you are watching this, you do know you can always drop us a comment, send us a message, just pop on there and do it. I am going to ask you, I would love you all to please tell me, what would you do with Mark Bonner? Would you stick or would you twist? So, yeah, pop them in the comments, send them over. Would you stick or would you twist? So, Paul, that leads me to you to ask you the exact same question. Are you sticking or are you twisting?
I'd want to talk to some of the players and find out what's going on. I think a situation like this is where, your senior players have got a role to play. When I was there with Neil, don't forget when I was sort of co-chairman there for a while, pre the Gallinsons, I had a very similar situation, with Neil. And when you spoke to the players, when you sort of just looked at the atmosphere around the club, you could see that everyone was still trying 100%. At this moment in time, it just seems a huge sort of disconnect. The players last night, I was really pissed off actually watching it last night. There was players who were kind of, 70%, only 60, 70%. And I just think that when I looked at it all, I was kind of thinking something's got to change. And unfortunately, I just think that, Marky seems a really good guy. I like the way he talks. He's a modern manager. But for me, I look at it and just think something's got to change. And if I was still there and, financially it would work, I think I'd probably be at a point when I would make a change.
Wow. Well, big words coming out from the former COO, obviously co-chairman. Warren, what about yourself? Would you stick or would you twist?
I think it's a tough one to answer, really. And I'll give you two things. I think Fish just touched on it. Financially, would we be able to do it? Bear in mind, we've just sacked two managers and Harris and Clements. Are we still paying them off? Have we already paid them off? Would it affect the budget? Blah, blah, blah. So I think financially you got to take into consideration. Do I think Mark Bonner's the best manager that's going to take us forward? Possibly not. But the culture in the world today, where I've seen a lot on Twitter today about Bonner should go, he's hopeless, he's rubbish and whatever. And when has anyone thought about Mark Bonner and his family when all this is going on, right? Because it's got to affect individuals, and it's been going on for a few weeks now. It's got to affect him as an individual. And I've been in a position where people have like been vociferous in trying to get me to sack in the job that I do, and it ain't nice. So I'm not going to say Bonner should go, right? Because you got to think of all the other reasons. And when I was a manager, right, I was always told, if you're going to sack somebody, walk away for an hour, think about it, and look at all the reasons why sacking him would be a good thing and why the reasons you shouldn't sack the person because of the aftermath of the person's family, who it affect, will it affect you in employing someone else, the cost, everything else. So I'm doing a bit of splinter here. I'm not going to call for him to be sacked, but as Fish alluded to, I think the Gallinsons should show some leadership now and should be going into that dressing room and seeing what's going on and sort it out. And if it's down to the players, we get rid of the players. If it's down to the manager, let's get shot.
Well, thank you for that little lecture, little rant there, Warren, on the stick or twist. Mike, what about yourself? What would you do? Would you stick? Would you twist? Or are you like Warren? Are you happy to sit on the fence?
Probably a bit of both, to be honest, Matt. I mean, here's the thing. We're 3 weeks away from a January window where it's not like a summer window. So there's not going to be wholesale changes in and out. So, all right, let's just say we lose on Saturday, we get rid of Bonner. What's the new manager going to be able to do in the next 6 months till between now and the end of the season that Bonner wouldn't be able to do? And you can't really say about a new voice, new face, but Bonner's only been here 6 months, you know. So, yeah, I'm with Warren, really. I've got to be honest, mate.
Well, I have not had a definite answer from all three of you. I would say, though, personally, you've got to stick with him. I mean, the Gallinsons will know this. They don't want to have the managerial merry-go-round, be known to be Gillingham Football Club, that you'll come in 6 months later, you're going to lose your job. They're not going to want, that to happen. I personally feel, there are a few bad eggs within the squad that need to be removed. Once they've been removed, things may look a bit brighter down the line. Guys, obviously, Mike did touch on it as well, though. We are only sort of 3 weeks or so away from the January transfer window opening. Paul, obviously, if you were still in charge, if you were the man with the money strings, would you be plowing £1 million into this January transfer window, or would you be keeping your coppers close to your chest until your summer transfer window?
I think you've got to look January gives you time, doesn't it? It still gives you time. I think it's an easy question for us as fans to answer when it's not our money. That's the first thing. It's not our money. I'd want to see a bit of a bloody light at the end of the tunnel before I started to splash any more cash. We've signed a lot of expensive signings the last couple of years. When I was there, we were shopping in bargain basement, free transfer stuff. And we probably got what we paid for in most instances. But I think I'd be keeping my powder dry, and we'd have to get a few out before I'd be thinking about getting one or two in.
Yeah, and Warren, I'm not going to ask you who you would want in, who you would want out, but what I will ask you, and there's been a lot of obviously talk about on social media about how Gillingham always seems to be a bit of a graveyard for players. These top talented players come to us and all of a sudden they stop performing. Do you think that's enough to potentially put potential transfer targets off in January?
I don't think it puts any player off if we offer them a pound note. I believe that with some of the players that we need to let go, we need to let go. We need to look at what sort of player we need. We definitely need pace in the team. We definitely need a leader, someone who's going to come in and take the captain's armband and take this group of players by the scruff of the neck and shake them and get them playing to their full potential, because they're not doing it at the moment. I think the issue is are the Gallinsons going to trust Mark with their money, or are they going to, as Paul says, stick and see it out? My only issue with sticking and seeing it out and seeing what we've got with these players is we could quite easily get relegated. And people may think it's a long way away, but trust me, in the sort of form that we're in, right, we are in serious trouble. Don't let anyone tell you any different. We are in serious trouble if this continues.
I mean, for me personally, we've got to bring back Jorge Hurtado. I think he was a great bit of a spark from last year. Bring back Jorge, wing life forever, and all that. But Mike, I'm going to ask about. I mean, do you think? Obviously, we've only had one loan, two loan signings now. Although I don't know if Ashby Hammond classes as an emergency loan as a goalkeeper. Do you think though we're going to be more likely delve into the loan market in January and then potentially look at buying players?
Well, loaning them with a view to buying them.
Yeah. Thinking more loan in January with potentially buying down the line.
Yeah, the only issue with that, Matt, and without wishing to sound glass half empty, we've seen it countless times down the years, haven't we? That you'll bring a player in on loan because they'll be looking for a contract elsewhere. Doesn't happen with every player, obviously, but we've seen it all too often. They'll have a Brahma for 6 months or, however long the loan's for. As soon as they get that security of a contract, they just dip off a bit and they're not quite the player that they were during their loan spell. Loan spells are all right to help you out and to top up the squad, but, normally you're loaning kids from higher divisions out. If you're loaning players out, a bit like with Mahoney, we loaned him out or we bought him in on loan, and would we have ended up giving him a permanent deal? I mean, he's ended up at Barrow, Matt. So does that tell a story?
I mean, to be fair, he's followed a manager that clearly put trust and faith in him.
Yeah, fair point.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think, and most Jules fans would have told you at the end of last season that he could have still been playing in, lower end championship, like maybe League One level. I think the only reason he's gone to a team like Barrow is because he's found a manager that really does believe and trusts in him and in his ability. But look, let's jump on to everyone's man of the match from the game. We've still got a few more slides to go through. So man of the match. Well, we've all picked the same player. I'm going to come to you, Paul, first. Paul, why Robbie for you?
I think Robbie always gives 100%. I felt he was actually, running and giving 100% last night, and he scored a decent goal. He scored a decent, he swung his boot at that and bottom corner. I think the goal he should have saved it, but he went in the back of the net. So it was a great goal.
I mean, I call Robbie a Swiss Army man because he can play in any position. But Warren, what about you? How come it was Robbie for yourself?
Because he scored, and that was the only decent thing that happened all night. So he deserved it just for that.
Blunt and to the point. It's exactly how I like it, Warren. Right, what about yourself? How come Robbie got your nod?
Yeah, well, obviously he got the goal, first and foremost, but he was probably the only player who looked capable of controlling the football last night and making a concisive, crisp and honest pass, because our first touch as a collective and our passing, not just last night, but obviously for the last few weeks, but last night, it only started raining after, during the second half. It was awful. Whereas Robbie, when he was playing it out to Jaden Clark or whoever he was passing it true. He wasn't half-hearted or anything. So, but I'm clutching at straws there.
Yeah, I mean, for myself, I gave him man of the match because even though he's been out for a good few weeks, he was the only one for me that really felt like he belonged in that team. Well-deserved goal by him, lots of hard work. If we had 11 Robbie McKenzies on this pitch, we would walk this league. But unfortunately, we only have one, but that he is our Swiss Army man. Let's jump on to the Views news. There's a little bit to get through in terms of the Views news. So racial slurs and flares galore. Harris versus Bonner, and positivity needs to return, but how? Now, racial slurs. Unfortunately, Chris, who is unfortunately not with us tonight, he will be back though on Monday. He was I say involved. He was there when there was a lot of racial slurs and chanting going on from certain Gillingham fans last night. Paul, I'm going to start with you. I mean, obviously, we all know it has no place in football, but what more can clubs do to stop this? Because it's kind of never ending, is it?
Yeah, I think I think people around them have got to call these people out as well. If you're hearing it, you've just got to call it out. It's got no place. It's got no place. You've got to call it out. You've got to self-police it a bit. You can't expect the clubs to do it all themselves. It's got no place. It's bloody 2024, for God's sake. It's not 1935.
Warren, Paul's absolutely right. There is no place for it in football, and these so-called fans, what they don't realise is, retrospectively, there's punishments that come back on Gillingham Football Club. I mean, there was flares. I saw one story about a flare being thrown and hitting a young boy in the head. Flares being thrown onto the pitch. I mean, first off, how are they getting these flares into the ground and not being searched? But do you believe that these are true Gillingham Football Club fans? Because we as a club, we're being fined for this.
Yeah. First of all, going to the racial slurs, right? I called out Swindon fans for racially assaulting a Gillingham fan down at Swindon, and I'll do the same to the Gillingham fans. Don't come to Gillingham if you want to indulge in this sort of crap, right? As everyone said, this day and age, right, in any form of society, it's no good. It's rubbish. Get yourself back in your hole, hide yourself up, and don't come out because we don't want you. End of story. With regards to the flares, can anyone tell me what the point of them are? Because I can't. And it's all to do with these foreigners abroad where you see thousands of flares and fireworks going off at games. And do supporters in this country really think that throwing one flare onto the pitch is going to recreate that sort of atmosphere? Absolutely not. All you're going to do is hurt someone. Someone's going to lose an eye. Someone's going to maybe lose a limb one day. And we're all going to say, well, I didn't mean it. Well, don't take them in the first place. And the stewards, you need to start searching people properly, not just a quick little pat.
No, and Mike, obviously, Warren makes a good point. We need to be searching, even whether home or away fans, a lot more carefully. Were you at the game last night, Mike?
No, I wasn't. I watched it on the telly, mate.
Okay. Yeah, well, so, I mean, obviously, I don't know if you have, or if you did hear anything, obviously, what's going on. But obviously, I'm sure you'll remember last year, Newport, the incident with Omar Bugle and fans.
Well, we had the goalkeeper a few weeks back, didn't we?
Yeah, I mean, it almost feels like, it almost feels like because of a certain select few fans, Gillingham are kind of almost getting this reputation now. It is just a small select group of fans. So what would you have to say to those small select group of fans that are doing this and to tell them to stop? Because it's exactly what
Warren said, mate. You know, crawl back under your stone, into your hole, and don't ever come out, because you people only ever come out. You feed off the negativity. You know, that's the sort of people they are. Unfortunately, they're nowhere to be seen when things are going well, are they? You know, and they feed off the negativity. They feed off the toxicity. It's bad enough as it is without you people making it worse. So just clear off and don't come back. Simple as that.
Yeah, I think one of the worst things about it is I think the average age of them were sort of 14, 15-year-olds that were doing it, which again for me makes it even worse that it's young boys doing it. You know, it has no place in football. Yeah, please guys, don't come to my club again because you're not Gillingham fans. You might like Gillingham Football Club, but you're not fans of the club. Let's move on to, though, Harris versus Bonner. So this is just a little bit of a comparison. I just kind of want to get your own guys' takes on Neil Harris and Mark Bonner. Obviously, it was it was a little bit earlier that Harris was let go in the season, but up until this point, would you say Bonner's maybe got the slight overhead of Harris in terms of how the season's progressing so far before Harris was let go, Paul? Do you think there's a difference in terms of style between Harris and Bonner that you can see?
Well, I was a really big fan of Neil. I think Neil's a good coach. I think he's gone on. Look what he's doing at Millwall. You know, he's a good coach. Yeah, it was stick or twist time with Neil. There was a lot of fans putting a lot of pressure on us at the time, you know. But I knew we had the gap. You know, I knew we had Brad and Shannon. We were in advanced talks with them. I knew we were going to invest wisely in January. And I thought Neil was the man to take us forward, which sort of post their takeover, I think we were proved right. You know, what a great second half to the season we had. And to this day, I was long gone by then, but I struggled to think why we let Neil go when we let Neil go. I think we were in fourth place at the time.
Yeah, I mean, Warren, Paul's right. We were flying high in the league under Neil Harris. But I do want to talk about two of the biggest differences, and I mentioned this to Matt from Jules and the Blood last week. And I'd love to hear your take on it as well. But obviously, we know Neil Harris, former Gillingham player, Millwall player, top goal scorer for Millwall, had a stellar playing career and then decided to get into the coaching, where obviously Mark Bonner hasn't played the game at a professional level. Do you think that could be something that is potentially hindering him as a coach going forward? Or are we looking at it as... it doesn't matter whether you've played the game at any level, as long as you have a passion for football, that's all that matters.
The biggest difference is one's a football man and one's a PR guru. I think with a new, don't get me wrong, I think both managers of the same type of football, which is, I've touched on it in previous shows about coming down from the England setup from Southgate, talking to his coaches, and we play this certain way with two holding midfield players, three in behind the lone striker, and I don't really like it. But I just think that Harris was more in touch with the dressing room than what Bonner is. And I think that's showing in what's going on out on the pitch.
Mike, well, I mean, what do you think about that, obviously, with what Warren has said? I mean, do you think, again, not to repeat the same question, but do you think that could be maybe where Bonner is failing, is that because he's not a football guy, he's not got that traditional football background of playing the game at a high standard, that maybe the players are kind of, I don't want to say ignoring him, but kind of not really taking on board what he was saying?
Almost sort of not taking him seriously all the time.
Yeah, almost.
Well, it's a unique situation, Matt. I think I'm right in saying that Bonner himself, his two coaches, and a goalkeeping coach, I don't think they played league football between the four of them.
Yeah, but to be fair, Aaron has played international football.
Yeah, you know,
got to give him a big up for that at least.
Loosely termed.
I mean, look, I don't think, and it goes back to the mentality thing, doesn't it? And they should have moved on as soon as he got sacked and respected the new man coming in and his methods. But I don't think a lot of these players, Matt, have psychologically moved on from Harris getting the sack. You know, it really does, because it's kind of really been downhill from there, hasn't it? Let's be honest.
It has, and that's actually kind of a good note to move on to our next point, which is the positivity needs to return to this club somehow. Paul, let's get out your magic crystal ball. How are we going to bring positivity back to Gillingham Football Club? In fact, do you know what? I've solved it. I know exactly how we do it, Paul. Paul, you are to quit your current job and you were to return COO of the football club. How about that? Yay! Positivity.
Well, I think time's moved on. I think Bradley Shannon and Joe are running the club now quite competently. Do you know what? Something's got to change. It's not going to change unless something changes. Whether that's making a change at a manager, whether that's making a change somewhere else in the setup, something has got to change. Which has got to be that spark to get the club moving forward, getting the team moving forward again.
Yeah, I mean, something definitely needs to change. And look, Warren, there's positive, but before 3 p.m, there's positivity outside. You know, you've got the fans zone going, you've got the new club shop, everything behind the scenes seems to be working so well at the Gills at the moment, but on the pitch, it's not. So if you were Mark Bonner and it's it's 10-3, you're about to give your final team talk to these boys before they walk out onto the pitch. What are you saying to them as your final message to try and give them as much positivity and backing as you can before they walk out onto that pitch?
Yeah, it's probably the wrong question I wanted you to ask me, Matt, about this particular subject, because I wanted to go on a bit of a rant. But
no, you can still go on a rant. But what would you say? What would you say to them?
Right. So, to me, there's a big disconnection between players, manager, and supporters at the moment. I don't know how you're going to do it, but between them, they've got to get that connectivity back. It was there at the start of the season, and it's disappeared, and it needs to come back.
Warren, you say about getting that connectivity back, and again, Paul, myself, what you and I'm sure Mike would have even been around in the days where at full time, Paul's disappeared for a moment, but at full time, you would get all the players coming to the bar after the game. And come and have a drink or two. Would you start making the players come in the bar after a game to try and get that connectivity back with fan group?
Absolutely, and I don't think, no matter what the result, I think when players go in for a drink, I think people are a little bit more respectful in the fact that in the old days when we had the old Jill Social Club, players used to come in, win or lose. They'd have a drink, they'd have a chat with supporters, and supporters held them in a much higher regard than what they do players now who have nothing to do with supporters at all. Now, whether that's an everyday thing, whether that's they're stuck up their own backside thing, I don't know. But it seems like everything else, we appease sponsors, and I'm sure Paul will probably disagree with me on this, but I think sponsors, although yes, they do put their money in, they do a lot of good work for football clubs to keep them going. They do help support clubs, but the players are suggested that they have a drink in the players' lounge with the sponsors before they go home. They don't do anything with the supporters. The Player of the Year do, which always used to be for supporters at the end of the season, is now a corporate event, which to me is complete rubbish, which is why I don't go. And it just brings this great big gap, and it goes back to when I first started watching England, and I went to watch England in Barcelona against Andorra for my first England away game, and I didn't realise how much the players hated the fans and how much the fans hated the players. Southgate managed to get that connectivity back, right? But up until Southgate took over, that connectivity wasn't there. But my rant, okay, is I've seen a lot of nasty comments on Twitter, going around doing arounds. And what I want to say to people is why do you go to football? Okay. I've been going 50 years. I've made a hell of a lot of friends. You take recently where I've started doing this pod and I've met you and Chris and whatever, and we're good mates. I've known Fish from a distance for probably the same number of years. We could quite easily go and have a drink and talk Gillingham every day of the week, right? Even though we don't speak from 1 year, 10 years to the next. We look at all the friends that you make, the fact that you can walk down the street and someone will say, "Hello, how are you?" And you think, where do I know him from? And then you think back 40 years that you was on the terraces together at some godforsaken northern hellhole. And I just look at it and I think, I play football, I play cricket with teams that came out of the Gills Social Club, came out of the Gills Travel Club, which was coaches that used to take fans to away games, and those great communities. We went on holidays all together. And I just think that without the football club, I wouldn't have had any of that. And that's why I'm appreciative of the football club. Yes, the football has been rubbish for the last 4 years. It's been poor. But I don't really want to go Saturday, right? But I will be there because it is my club. And I think that people have got to put life into perspective a little bit. And if you don't really like something and you're going to get that hat up over the football club and you want to demand seconds, you want to demand players go, you want to do this, that and the other, right, then don't go. Support your football club.
You're right, and I fully agree with what you say. I mean, I like you. This football club is the only club I've ever known. It's the only club I've ever loved. It's the only club I've ever wanted to go and support home and away, whether you're playing at Morecambe or whether you're playing at Maidstone. It doesn't matter. I always wanted to be there for games, and Mike, I've got to ask. Obviously, a lot of this negativity that we are getting does seem to come from a certain group of almost toxic fans that are out there, and I think the biggest issue, obviously, especially nowadays with football, with social media, is nobody has everyone has almost a blank face to hide behind. But do you think that potentially that the players are picking up on some of these comments that are being said about them on social media? And obviously, football players are human at the end of the day. They have lives, and they have mental health that can affect them. And do you think that social media is actually almost a bad thing for these players?
Life was so much better before mobile phones.
And it was,
right.
Warren, but this was for Mike. This is for Mike to answer.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's all right. Well, again, it goes back to character and mentality, I suppose, doesn't it? Listen, if anything ever goes beyond the pale, that's just, if it gets personal, then that's out of order. But if we're telling players we're not happy in no uncertain terms, so long as it's not going too far, they've got to be able to take that on the chin to a certain extent. And obviously, a couple of weeks back, where allegedly, I haven't heard or seen anything, but according to other fans, we're getting players turning around and telling us fans, well, if you don't like it, don't turn up. If you start coming out with comments like that on the back of performances that we've had, you're making a rob for your own back, really, Matt, at times.
Absolutely. Well, let's just go through a couple more slides. These are some photos, obviously, from Chris from last night. Just a few, just to see if you're in that bottom left-hand one. If you are, give us a thumbs up and a like and a subscribe. A bit of a look ahead, though, to the next game. That is obviously Salford this weekend. Gillingham's last 5 games, they're not looking very pretty. A loss, draw, win, that loss and a loss. With Salford's last 5 games being a win, draw, loss, draw, and a win. Paul, obviously we're 3 days out, 2 days out. But what are you expecting from the boys at the weekend?
I'd like to see a reaction from Wednesday night. I'd like to see a proper reaction on that pitch. We're at home. You've got to be optimistic, and my heart is telling me we're going to get a win, 1-0, but my head is telling me probably a draw at best.
Warren, what about yourself? Is there? Mark Bonner did come out and said there is the potential that I think it was Aaron Rowe and Bradley Dack, who have both trained this week, and that he was going to potentially make a lot of changes going ahead. Can you see that? I mean, do you have an idea on what potentially the starting 11 could be?
I haven't got a clue, but I can't see anything changing unless the players' attitudes change, and I don't think it's going to happen in 2 days. We was expecting a reaction after the Harrogate debacle. We didn't get it. I think Salford at this moment in time are playing some pretty good stuff, and I can only see a 2-0 win for Salford.
Oh well, Warren, boo you! You're banned from the show for next week because you said we're not going to win 7-0. Mike, what about yourself? Obviously, with the weekend, I'm going to ask you kind of similar. But do you think if Aaron Rowe, Bradley Dack, if they're fit, are they for you in your squad? If not in your starting 11 for this week?
Oh, absolutely. But it's going to take more than 2 players to turn around their fortunes. We need the other 8 or 9 on the pitch to turn up, and the other 15 or so. Personally, I'd like to see Joe Bode come back in as well. He shows a bit of fight, a bit of passion. He's a young lad, and he causes problems when he comes on for us. But he hasn't been able to get a look in the last couple of weeks. We want a reaction, but we've been saying that we've wanted a reaction for the last 6 weeks, Matt. So I don't think any of us are going to hold our breath on that.
No, absolutely not. Well, guys, look, we've been on for just over an hour now. Just as a reminder, we are, of course, sponsored by the Gillingham Football Club Supporters Association. So if you are not already a member, please think about signing up. Look at that, perfect. For an adult, 1 year is £10, or you get the mighty 3 years for just £20, saving lots of money and also getting a chance to be entered into a prize draw each month, £50 for the first prize winner, and £25 for the second prize winner. Guys, we have come, though, to the end of the show. Please, if you're not already, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channels. Everything is there for you. He's been Paul. He's been Warren. He's been Mike. I've been Matt. Up the Gills.